Welcome to Beyond the Boardroom with Ben Bobo, a well-known entrepreneur and trailblazer who has led startup organizations for more than 15 years. Beyond the Boardroom is the only streaming video show in Orange County that interviews thought leaders from all different industries and cultures about life lessons they wish they'd learned earlier in life, covering topics that weave together the fabric of life and career, bringing you recipes for success, shared pearls of wisdom, and key life lessons for business and personal growth. Now here is your host, Ben Bobo.
Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to Beyond the Boardroom. We have a very special guest. We were filming today in California. I got a very special guest, Eli Kammerman. Eli is a vice president in business development and investor relations at Masimo. And Masimo is a major medical device manufacturer, really well known for non-invasive monitoring. Eli, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thanks for inviting me, Ben.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as part of the show, we try to understand very successful people and what their recipes for success are. And if you look at Eli, he's got a great position within Masimo. He's really been integral in their success and acquiring companies, etc. But I think Eli will take us on a very interesting journey as he kind of goes through his development that got him to this point in time. So Eli, which hurdles did you personally face as you ascended to vice president role at Masimo, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the first hurdle that I faced was trying to determine a career path when I failed to get into medical school, which was a little bit of a surprise since I had spent so many years planning to become a physician. So not getting in led me to consider alternatives, right, which primarily consisted of trying to get employment in the biotech industry back in the mid-'80s. That seemed to work out pretty well. The other major challenges that I faced were dealing with layoffs at businesses that either ran out of cash or were in a poor financial condition and had to be sold. And I had to deal with multiple layoffs over the course of many years, and each time that happened, it was necessary for me to pick a new direction and also be able to adapt with some level of versatility in terms of choosing a viable new pathway.
So let me stop you there. This is interesting. So you wanted to go to medical school, and for whatever reason, that didn't pan out. And then you pivoted and you started looking at business opportunities, and you had some challenges with people running out of money, small companies, early stage startups. So let's go back to medical school. When that didn't pan out, how did you overcome that disappointment? Because clearly you said you planned a long time to do that. How mentally did you have the grit and determination to see it correctly and then move beyond that?
Well, in the early days of biotech, there were a decent number of companies in my hometown of Gaithersburg, Maryland, one of the early biotech centers of the country. So upon completing my undergraduate work in biology, I simply started looking in the yellow pages for potential places to work and began calling.
Right. So when you had that setback, so to speak, in medical, your mindset was very positive and you just pivoted and said, I got biology as a minor or a major, and we're just going to go and look for the opportunity that would sort of line up with.
Exactly.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. And then as far as the layoffs, there were times when I was caught by surprise and essentially had to consider a much broader set of opportunities because things weren't really working out in the biotech area as I had expected them to be. There was competition for capital in those early days. And so that's what led me to decide to change career tracks at that point and go to Wall Street and become an analyst.
So were the answers obvious? In other words, when you started changing your strategy, changing your focus and direction, were the answers obvious as to where you would end up or what the pathway would be? Or was it sort of onward into the fog, kind of a not sure process, but you just knew that you would work the process?
Well, I was really on the fence between two different career paths, one towards finance and the other one towards marketing and advertising. And I pursued opportunities along both of those pathways and got to a fork in the road where I had to make a decision between one or the other. And for me, it was quite clear that the opportunity in finance, working as an analyst on Wall Street, would be a more rewarding pathway, both in terms of intellectual stimulation as well as in terms of overall compensation and potential upside.
So you got started then, as you walk us through it, because there was that fork in the road. You had to make one decision or the other, and you first started off in finance as your sort of first entree or entry into the business world.
Right. After working at a few different biotech-related companies and diagnostics companies, I had become a product manager there, and I was interested in applying the skills I had learned in financial modeling and forecasting to another career path, because the company I was with was either going to shut down or be sold with everyone's job up in the air.
Now, how'd you get interested in financial modeling and forecasting?
Well, I always liked math, and I liked working with numbers, and I also like to make predictions and see if they turn out to be accurate. So doing forecasts for various product lines was something that I found very interesting, and I also got a lot of satisfaction out of knowing that my forecast was on target.
So you talk about forecasting, and you mentioned there's a number both on the biotech side and when you got into the financial world of Wall Street, there was a lot of doors that ultimately shut sort of in your face, if you will, and you're forecasting, right? And so I'm going to go to this opportunity versus that opportunity. How did you think about, or how did that play a role, that mindset of I forecast, I want to predict? How did that play a role into your evolvement in the sort of a Wall Street scene and the companies you worked with?
Well, my first analyst role was as an associate to a senior biotech analyst. And when he decided to leave that firm after working with him for a couple of years, that left me up in the air. And then I had to shift gears a little bit because there were only a limited number of associate analyst positions for biotech analysts. So I expanded my horizons some and wound up working for an analyst who wanted to launch research coverage on the medical devices sector, which I also had a good working knowledge of, as well as a good scientific background for in terms of knowing anatomy and physiology.
So you were laying the groundwork, would ultimately be your role at Masimo.
That's right.
Maybe unintentionally so, but you were laying the groundwork. Yeah. So that's really interesting. So what compelled you then, once you've had that experience, to go into business development here at Masimo?
Well, my final analyst position went away back in the market meltdown in the fall of 2008. And at that point, I had already gone back and forth from the healthcare industry to Wall Street twice. And I knew that I was not going to easily find another Wall Street position because the market was in such turmoil. So I was able to use my industry background one more time to make the jump to a product company where I could apply my skill set in financial modeling and forecasting for assessing acquisition candidates, and also for assessing the potential competitive environment that a company might be operating in terms of what kind of market share it might ultimately be able to capture with its own innovations.
So all that foundation really built you up and prepared you for the eventuality of what you're doing today. And I remember last time we met, you had this interesting perspective or quote about how all those things sort of build the experience skill sets to allow you to go into the next opportunity. Can you share with the audience sort of your perspective and philosophy on that?
Yeah, I think a person should always be looking to learn new skills and broaden their basket, so to speak. It's great to have multiple arrows in the quiver so that no matter what type of challenge you're faced with in your career, you're able to deal with it effectively. Mm-hmm. For me, I've always enjoyed using both sides of my brain. One side with the verbal speaking and writing skills, the other side with the quantitative analysis tools. And for me, it's very interesting to be able to switch back and forth.
So hence the interest in marketing and finance.
Exactly.
Using both sides of your brain. Part of this show is really about beyond the boardroom. The boardroom is a metaphor for our mind, right? And we know that the mind's impacted by really three forces: people, experiences we've gone through, and certainly choices we make. And as we think about the board of directors or the board we have in our lives, we have a board of directors. Who would you say in your life has been the most impactful member of your personal board that's really driven you where you're at today?
Well, I'd say the biggest influence in my life has most likely been my own mother in terms of providing me with good career advice, good personal life advice, and just good insights into ways to effectively deal with people.
Really? Interesting. Can you give us one example in terms of, because that's an important skill set, working with and through people and the different personalities. What kind of advice did your mom give you?
Well, one piece of advice, of course, was always do the right thing, which is kind of the golden rule of living.
Right.
But in terms of being effective in a career, one of the things she always told me was be enthusiastic, and if you want something, let people know what you want.
That's sage advice. That's awesome. All right, well, Eli, we'll come back more after a message from our sponsor.
35 million people in America suffer from migraine headaches once or twice a month. Historically, migraines have been diagnosed and treated subjectively with a hit-and-miss rate of success. Serenitex is leading the effort in precision migraine screening that gives you an objective diagnosis and guide to treatment. Do you suffer from tension headaches or chronic migraines? Could you benefit from the right medication for relief and get your life back to health? If so, then come volunteer to be part of this groundbreaking research study on migraine diagnostics. To participate, contact serenitex.com or call 949-538-5600, extension 107.
Welcome back to Beyond the Boardroom. You know, Eli, one of the things I've noticed in my career that there are one or two things that I learned that if I had known them 10, 15 years before, recipes for success, I could have been that much more effective, that much more efficient in my career progression. So I'm going to ask you that question. What are one or two things that you learned in your progression that somebody, spoke into your life that really left an impression from a career or personal standpoint?
Well, for cultivating a career that has great rewards, I think there are two essential factors that are necessary to really maintain. One is having strong networks and network ties, and really being diligent about maintaining regular contact with your network. That's the only way to keep it alive. It's kind of like having a plant. It needs water to thrive. And so if you don't maintain that regular contact, then the plant withers and eventually it just dies away.
And if I could stop you, what was interesting is you talked about your progression in Wall Street and companies that ran out of money and the uncertainty. Before LinkedIn, you had this amazing network at multiple companies within Wall Street that no matter when you hit that proverbial wall, you were able to land back on your feet because you kept those relationships alive. And this was before LinkedIn, which is really quite remarkable.
That's absolutely true. I've always believed that it's important to maintain good, cordial, friendly relationships with people, and that way people can help each other. It's very, very dangerous to be negative and create animosity, because you never know how that could come back and bite you, number one. And number two, it's actually fairly destructive in terms of helping you live up to your own potential.
Right.
Another key factor I would say is important for growing your career in the optimal way is trying to have mentoring on a continuous basis. No matter where you are and what you're doing, there's always somebody who knows more about it than you do. And if you can have a mentor at every point in every role, I think it can be very, very beneficial. So I would encourage people to try to identify somebody who could be an effective mentor for them.
That's huge. So that's the recipe, and maybe those are some pearls of wisdom, unless you have a couple more, but would those also be the pearls that you would share with the group, that looking forward, as you think about where Eli's at in his career, are there some pearls, either personal or professional, that you'd say, guys, if you do these one or two things, it can make a world of difference in your career or personal prospects?
Absolutely. I have some ideas I'd like to share. Firstly, I think it's important in today's world to be timely and to provide people with timely responses to their questions or requests. Time continues to accelerate or compress because of the easy availability of communications technology, and what used to be considered adequate to respond in one day really isn't the standard anymore. And so I think if somebody can provide a response in a matter of hours instead of days, it makes a big difference in terms of the credibility that that person goes on to build. Secondly, I also think it's quite important for people to anticipate questions from their colleagues and their superiors, and to have ready answers for those questions in any type of interaction. In that regard, I would encourage people to always be prepared to deliver a little more than is requested, because whatever extra you deliver will probably address some of those questions.
Right. That is incredible advice, and a lot of people don't always do that. They're not always thorough. They don't always anticipate the questions, and certainly in business development, analyst work, you're in the business of anticipation and trying to do predictive modeling. So that's profound and powerful. Let me pivot a little bit here. Tell me something that's true, that you believe is true, that almost nobody agrees with you on.
Well, I do a lot of armchair research as a biologist, and one of the things that I believe is true is that many chronic diseases, especially diseases of aging, are related to either the presence or a triggering by some type of infectious organism, a virus or a bacteria. Mm-hmm. And I think there'll be more and more data to support these hypotheses coming out over the next few years. There's already a lot of new information coming out with regard to causes of Alzheimer's, and that disease being related to the presence of certain viruses in the brain.
Interesting. Well, Lord knows there needs to be some breakthroughs in Alzheimer's, and the research is certainly there, but we need certainly a lot more breakthroughs. It's a very debilitating disease. What is your biggest regret as you look back in time? Do you have any big regrets, or?
Well, I have some regrets that run along the same theme, and that is early in my career, there were times when I wasn't fully prepared for a presentation, and I could have been much more well prepared in terms of having certain notes or having gone through some rehearsals. So that's something that I regret from a ways back. I think I've addressed it in this later stage of my career, but if I was going to give my early self some advice, I would say always be maximally prepared.
Right. That's awesome advice. Very true, very true. So is there anything that you want to tell the audience that we haven't covered?
Well, in terms of cultivating a career effectively, I think it's very important to know what direction a person wants to go into, mm-hmm. and not to be subject to the pinball effect of being bounced around. So setting a target and then figuring out a route to get to the target, mm-hmm. I think is really vital.
So being very intentional,
exactly.
Very deliberate, very well thought out. Where can the audience learn more about you?
On my LinkedIn page.
Okay. So Eli Kammerman, LinkedIn, check him out. He's doing some really great stuff. And so that's it for Beyond the Boardroom. We appreciate you tuning in today. You can get to learn more about Eli on our LinkedIn, our Facebook page, Beyond the Boardroom Show. And until next time, remember, becoming is better than being.
When we founded Stradling in 1975, we made a commitment to helping our clients to succeed and create opportunities for business growth throughout California and beyond. Our people share cutting-edge focus in guiding the critical transactions and disputes of our clients. And we've developed a deep bench of contacts and resources to get the job done. As trusted advisors to technology, life science, software, and medical device companies, we've invested in building our expertise, developing the best of legal talent, and the readiness to serve the business community. From our commitment to our clients to our deep involvement in the communities we serve, we understand our job is your success.
This video was brought to you by 800 KAMERMAN, Southern California's only 20-time National Emmy Award-winning production company.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Boardroom. We look forward to bringing you more thought-provoking episodes again real soon, and look forward to your feedback and remarks. If you have any particular topic or person you would like to have us cover or interview, please reach out to us at ben@beyondbobo.com. Till next time, may you continue to map your own path to success.